Senator Murphy said in his exchange with you that you weren't prescribing a methodology in the supplement and supplant section we were discussing. You were merely saying that states and local school districts could use their own methodology as long as they got the result that was desired. Is that right?
They can use their own methodology in order to ensure that they fulfill the principle of supplement, not supplant.
And in defining what we mean by, in your proposed rule by, and I was listening to what you said too as you described what that goal was, would it be accurate to say that the local education agency, the school district, has to demonstrate that the combined state and local per pupil expenditure, including personnel expenditures in each school, each Title I school, is not less than the average combined state and local per pupil expenditures in the non-Title I schools? Is that about right?
It's that the allocation of funds to state and local funds to Title I schools has to be at least equal to the average non-Title I school. Now, approach might include looking at staffing and program provision, but another approach might be a weighted student funding formula approach.
But in any event, it would have to include teachers and personnel, right?
It would include the total impact of the allocation of state and local dollars.
Yeah. Did you realize that that's precisely the definition in Senator Bennett's amendment on comparability when he sought to amend Section 1120, which didn't succeed and which he acknowledged this morning didn't succeed? So the effect of your proposed rule is to change the comparability law, which Congress did not change.
Again, we're not addressing comparability here. We're addressing
But the effect of it
supplement,
would
not
be,
supplant.
you'd have the same effect as if you were to change the comparability law, which has not been changed since 1970.
Well, that would depend on the circumstances in a given district, but the key in the district is that the Title I dollars would be genuinely supplemental and not used to backfill.
Well, but you're saying that in order to do that, you've got to have the spending in the Title I schools, including teacher salaries, has got to be not less than the average combined state and local expenditures in the non-Title I schools. That's comparability. That's what we didn't change.
No, again, here, because the focus is on supplement, not supplant, the question is whether or not the total local and state effort is at least equal to the non-Title I school. And a school could address a gap in effort through a variety of mechanisms. They could add advanced coursework, they could add a preschool program, they could take a number of strategies. It's not saying that the services need to be the same. It's saying that the allocation of dollars, of Title I dollars, has to be supplemental.
Well, but you're saying the total state and local effort for the non-Title I schools has to be the same as for the Title I schools, right?
Has to be at least equal to the average non-Title I school, which
be,
again could result in variety within a district.
Which again is the comparability. I mean, that's what comparability is. I mean, I sought to change it by introducing an amendment to do as Senator Burr suggested, allowing dollars to follow, federal dollars to follow children from low-income families to the school they attend. That was rejected. Senator Bennett had his amendment. The changes in the supplement, not supplant law are to some extent, maybe a large extent, due to recommendations directly from the Center for American Progress, the Federal Education Law Group, and the American Enterprise Institute. I'm going to read you a paragraph which they said, and I ask you to comment on it. They said, quote, "It's important that the proposed change, the one that was made, we made in supplement and supplant, would not look at whether the amount of state and local money a Title I school receives is equitable, given the significance of the problems caused by the supplement, not supplant test. This issue should be addressed on its own, separate from other Title I fiscal issues. Concerns over equity can be addressed through Title I's comparability requirement." What would you say to that?
Well, here, I think part of what they're referencing is the number of problems that we saw with the supplement, not supplant approach under No Child Left Behind, that indeed it was a burdensome process that did not achieve the desired goal of ensuring that Title I dollars are supplemental. We're not making a change to comparability, we're making a change to supplement, not supplant, to reflect a change in law. Supplement, not supplant is different under ESSA, as you know, than under NCLB. And we were asked by a variety of stakeholders to provide clarity on implementation of supplement, not supplant under ESSA, and that's what we've proposed to the negotiated rulemakers.
But what you've proposed must have the effect of equal spending by state and local dollars in Title I schools as well as non-Title I schools before you get the Title I money. Isn't that correct?
It does not require equal spending. It requires that the state and local funds in Title I schools are at least what is being spent in state and local funds in the average non-Title I school.
Yeah.
So in a given district, you would see still variety within,
Well, that
within
equalizes
that district.
spending. I mean, if you say you've got to spend at least as much here as the average of here, I mean, that's what we call comparability, isn't it?
No, I mean, the decision to use the average non-Title I school means that there would be a variety of spending levels in the non-Title I schools.
Section 1605 of the law says nothing in this title shall be construed to mandate equalized spending per pupil for a state, local, educational agency, or school. What would you say to that?
Again, this wouldn't equalize spending. What it would say is that in the Title I school, you've got to be spending at least as much in state and local resources as is spent in the average non-Title I school. There'd be a range of spending levels within non-Title I schools, so you would not be requiring districts to spend the same in all schools. But you would be ensuring, importantly, that the Title I dollars are in fact supplemental and not being used to backfill.
Well, there are plenty of ways to figure that out without equalizing spending. This sounds to me exactly like the kind of thing the department got into with academic standards with Common Core. You basically said states didn't have to adopt Common Core, but then you came up with a requirement that in effect required them all to do it. And it produced an enormous backlash, which was a big part of the passage of this law. So I would urge you to look carefully at this supplement, not supplant, negotiated rulemaking proposal, which is in an early stage, because in my view, it violates the unambiguous prohibitions that were in the law that the President signed in December, related to prescribing state and local funding methodologies, mandating equalizing spending, you're not supposed to do that, interfering with state and local programs of instruction, prohibited from doing that, or controlling the allocation of state and local resources. It ignores Congress's intent, which was to not change the requirements on comparability. It regulates outside the scope of the supplement, not supplant requirement. It would impose unprecedented burdens on state and local school districts, requiring an overhaul of almost all the state and local finance systems, giving districts few options other than forcing the transfer of teachers to new schools, perhaps in direct conflict with collective bargaining contracts with teachers' organizations. And it would require states to move back to the burdensome practice that we had before. And as I mentioned earlier, according to the Great City Schools Council, it would cost $3.9 billion just for the 69 urban school districts to address state and local funding disparities, $9 million in the department alone. I have only one other question. Flexibility for 8th grade students taking advanced math. Now, one thing we heard about more than anything else in this reauthorization was over-testing and more flexibility in testing, and we thought we provided that. But here's a rule that says that you may take, well, the new law permits a state to allow 8th grade students to take the end-of-the-year test for passing the advanced math test in place of the 8th grade test. In other words, if you're an 8th grader and you can take Algebra 2, you can take that instead of the basic 8th grade test. That just makes common sense, and in fact, the department's waivers allowed that. Now you are proposing to add a new requirement, one that you apparently just made up, which says a state can be granted this flexibility only if it demonstrates that it offers all students in the state the opportunity to be prepared for and to take advanced mathematics coursework in middle school. I mean, where did that come from? That's not in the law.
Well, this is being discussed by the negotiators. I think the key question here is, to the extent that opportunities are to be equitably provided to access advanced coursework. We know, for example, that there are high schools around the country serving large numbers of low-income students of color that don't even offer Algebra 2 or chemistry. We know that there are middle schools serving high numbers of low-income students of color that don't even offer access to the algebra course. So if you're going to have an assessment system that provides comparable information about equitable access to opportunity in schools, you need to ensure that students have that opportunity. For a school to not offer students access to that advanced course means that you are then using the assessment system to, in a sense, reify inequitable access to
Dr.
opportunity.
King, if you'll excuse me, if you were a United States Senator on the floor of the Senate, that'd be a very good and persuasive argument, but you're not. And we could have written that into the law, but we didn't. I mean, we basically said that a state may allow an 8th grade student who's taking an advanced math course to take it and not have to take the test in the basic course at the same time. Now, you've come along and said, well, that's an interesting idea, and we think it'd also be good to make all the states and 100,000 public schools to change the way they offer advanced math courses to include a lot more students. That may be a noble aspiration, but it's not in the law. And for an agency that only funds 4%, of the Title I funding is 4% of what state and local governments spend, those decisions ought to be left to the elected officials, not to people in your department.
Yeah. But you can't get comparable, valid, reliable information about student performance if the assessment is only available to some students and not others. And so the goal here is to ensure that the assessment system provides
But you're not in
comparable
charge of the accountability system. In fact, the law requires that the result of those tests be a part of the state's accountability system. What we're trying to get rid of is you here telling states what to do with the results of tests. And it must have made common sense to say that if you're an 8th grade student taking an advanced math course, that you can take it and you don't have to also take the basic 8th grade test, period. I mean, the department allowed states to do that in the waiver. Why are you making this up now?
Well, the design of the accountability system, yes, there's state flexibility around the accountability system, but the states are to generate comparable information about the performance of students within any given grade. And if you've got an assessment that's available only to some students,
Who's
you're
going to
not
decide
going
that?
to...
Are you going to decide that?
States would decide how that would work
Well,
in their districts.
why not let them decide it?
We are.
But no, you've said in your proposed rule, and I won't belabor it any further, I hope you'll go back and take a look at this. I mean, you've basically put in a new requirement that you can only take this flexibility Congress gave if you do what the department now wants to legislate, describe that you offer all students in the state the opportunity to be prepared for and take advanced mathematics coursework in the middle school. It's kind of hard to know what that would mean anyway. You were asked by one of the senators, do you have anything else to tell us about, you sent proposed regulations to the Office of Management and Budget last week on accountability systems, state plans, innovation assessment pilot. When are you going to make details of those proposals public? What's your intended timeline for final regulations? And what can you tell us about other areas of the law that you intend to issue guidance on or provide technical assistance?
Yeah. So the accountability regulations are now with OMB for review. We expect later this spring, early summer, those regulations will be posted for comment. We will later develop regulations based on the input that we have received from stakeholders on state plans and on the innovative assessment pilot. We expect those regulations to be out for public comment in the fall. The goal is to have all the regulations in place by the end of the year so that states are in a position to develop plans in spring and the summer of next year, submit those plans in spring of summer of next year so that they are ready for full implementation in September 17. We've also committed to develop guidance on services for homeless students, foster care students, and English learners. But we're continuing to gather feedback and input from stakeholders, and will potentially develop additional guidance documents based on what states, districts, educators, parents, civil rights organizations are telling us they need in order to ensure clarity and have examples of best practice.
Thank you, Dr. King. I hope you'll reflect on this hearing today. You know, we have many different opinions on this committee, and we were able to come to a law, and each of us can speak for ourselves. But for me, I think it's very clear that we did not intend that you come up with some clever way to use one provision, the supplement and supplant provision, to change another provision, the comparability provision, that we deliberately did not change because we couldn't agree on how to change it. We left the law exactly like it is. And I hope you'll take another look at that. I mean, your responsibility is to faithfully execute the law and abide by the letter of the law, and I don't think the beginning of those rule proposals suggests that that's what some of the employees are doing. So we'll look forward to following the implementation of the law carefully during the rest of the year. If there are no other get my concluding comments here. The hearing record will remain open for 10 business days. Members may submit additional information and questions to our witnesses for the record within the time if they would like. Thank you for being here, Dr. King. The committee will stand adjourned.